Welcome to the Governance version 2 explainer video. We've created this video to be a supplementary video to assist in understanding the Governance version 2 IIP that has been created. Okay, so Annie, why Governance version 2? Why the need for the change in the first place?
Yeah, so the change is really stemming from the fact that we're, as a project, shifting from being primarily an investor-focused project to one that's going to have a product, in this case, a game out. And Governance V1, brilliantly structured, but it was designed for a DeFi protocol, right? The entire structure was taken from synthetics and some other DAO structures and tokenomic structures. And so as a project, there are really no competitors in the space that have something as robust as what we need. And so really the intention was to create something that lets us get the right stakeholders involved now, which are not just ILV holders, but also gameplay specialists, all of our customers, all of our content creators, the guilds that are going to be involved. All of those individuals need to be able to contribute feedback for the protocol without having to have ILV. And in general, we need to have different channels for getting the information from those groups in order to make better decisions for the governance protocol.
And Deraji, why do you think there's a need for a change?
I think Annie nailed a lot of it, but it's just looking at, we've lived Governance V1 for a couple years now, effectively. And I think from that, those of us that have been really active in the community, the governance chats, and on the council, like, we've seen the limitations, we've seen what are the opportunities. And as we make this change, it really is important to try to bring as much of that knowledge in. And to me, it's really two what almost sound like conflicting ideas of, we want to have the right person in the right position to make the decision, but we want to be community driven and listen to the community. And it's trying to figure out, how do you balance those two things into a structure that actually makes sense and can actually get things done?
And for me, the biggest thing that this change brings is this feeling of, we have an amazing community in Illuvium with a lot of skilled people that have a lot to offer Illuvium. And we've been in this weird place where a lot of what's been offered, like, Illuvium actually cannot receive it because the structure isn't there for that information to actually go up the food chain, let's say. And I think that's what Governance 2 brings a solution to, and really makes governance far more accessible, as well as just more productive at what it's supposed to perform. So let's get into, what is Governance version 2 actually going to look like? Deraji, could you explain what we're looking at in this graph?
Yes. So I think I'll even start with what's Governance V1. And so we talk about, right now, we have a lot of community discussion in Discord. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a 5-member council that's elected by the community through ILV to really be representatives of that and help guide the protocol with connection to the team. And so as we look at what are the things that we changed, I know Annie's talked about this a lot on his channel and various chats. It's having kind of a sub-council structure that is more specialized in the key areas that we really need to focus on as we move forward, as we get into this next generation of what Illuvium is as a product and a DAO together. And hopefully folks can kind of see where the 4 sub-councils are, but still keeping it this representative means of decision making, which is a little bit more powerful to me than kind of just a free-for-all community voting.
And Annie, how does somebody get on the sub-council? How is that going to work in this proposal?
Yeah, so it's still structurally the same in terms of it being a representational model. So the ILV holders today are still going to vote for individuals to fill the roles in the sub-councils. In general, though, the difference is, you're not applying for I'm going to use a Web3 word here, a fungible position. You're actually nominating yourself for a position that's specialized. So we have different sub-councils that are intended to be focused on different parts of the Illuvium community needs. And so we've got 3 different I'm going to call them second tier or second level councils. You've got the marketing sub council, you've got the gameplay sub council, and you've got the ecosystem sub council. And the idea is we would have community members nominate themselves for a given epoch, and the community is then going to vote on those individuals who are specialized in those functional areas. For someone that's more of a generalist that has interest and knowledge and skills kind of across the entire space, we have the community sub-council. And in general, what we would expect is people would be self-identifying into one of these four sub-councils based on their own background and abilities. We assume that people know their talents better than the community does, and so they should be willing to put themselves out there to be on one of these councils as a nominee.
So the election process, it would be essentially the same as what it is now. The only difference being that if you're nominating yourself, you're running for the council, you're actually going to have to only run for one of those four sub-councils. And the way it works is the marketing, the game, and the ecosystem sub-councils, there are only 2 community positions on each one of those, and the community sub-council has 5 positions. Now, those third positions you see on the ecosystem, game, and marketing sub-councils, they are going to be team members. So the logic behind that is that the 2 people that are voted in by the community, they would be likely much more engaged with the community and getting a lot more feedback on their specific specialty, both like from the community and directly with the community sub-council, and getting those ideas and then presenting them in that meeting to a third person, being a team member, that could give them context from within the team as to whether such an idea or proposal can work or how it could work, and to better understand what's happening and to bring things higher up into the overarching 5 council members that are the sort of top 5. Could you explain, Deraji, how the top 5 council members work? Where do each one of those 5 come from? How are they voted in?
Yeah, so I think take a step back really quickly and just give a little bit of context of why a team member is on both of these. And you can speak up as well, Vetemor, but like you've been on council, having Kieran there is just critical for us having any kind of productive conversation. Like at the end of the day, we can talk it a number of different ways, but there's critical context that he brings, and is it actionable or give us additional context or even take it back to the team. So you have to have that link back. And so just giving the idea of like, Kieran has had to be elected into that position, and we've been lucky enough that he has won it several times in a row, but is he the right person for it? And when we think about that, it's who has the right time availability to commit to the things that we're going to expect of the sub-councils and the top council moving forward. So that's why it's really important that the team actually get to decide who is the best person to be there. And so that layers into how do you get on the top council? What's that about? It's actually an election within each of the sub-councils. And so you've got the 3 members on each of kind of those mid-tier councils. You've got the 5 on the community council. They're going to hold an election amongst themselves and say, who is the best one of us to represent on that top level council? And so that gives you your 4 spots. So the community is going to decide of the 5, let's vote for who's the best. Of the marketing, the game, and the ecosystem, they're going to decide who's the best. And then we layered in a couple things to really make sure that community is still centric on this, that you can't have more than 2 team members on that top level council. But you also note I only talked about where do 4 of them come from. 1 fulfills that responsibility of still having that team connection. And it's actually, we call it the team admin. And so who is the best person decided by the team to bring that representation there? And then of the remaining 4 councils, they can decide who is the best and who has the time to commit to have that additional responsibility of that highest level council.
And to clarify a little bit, Annie, could you explain why there are 3 tiers and the community sub-council isn't on the same level as the ecosystem, game, and marketing sub-council?
Yep. Yeah. So the idea is that each IIP that comes in would be funneled immediately to the community subcouncil. And so in there, the idea is to have a very good sentiment across the entire ecosystem. All right, what's going on? There should be a good filter layer on the front end because we want more IIPs to be delivered. And we think that we're going to see a pretty big uptick in the number over this next epoch, especially as we've got gameplay coming out. We're going to be ramping up marketing and so forth. And so all of these areas need to have more community involvement in IIPs coming. As those IIPs come to the community council, they should then be deciding which of those 3 second level sub councils is the right one to discuss it. Because it's pretty rare that you would have an IP that only affects one area. There's always some kind of crossover, and you need a group to be able to look at it and say, what are the fundamental most important points that need to be discussed and revised? And so we're going to then decide to send this particular IP to the ecosystem layer. We're instead going to send this one to the gameplay layer. And that gives it the first routing. As soon as you get an IIP to that second level, those subcouncils, of course, are going to need to be doing the research, the analysis, providing their specialized knowledge onto the key topics, revising the drafts as necessary, and then presumably when things are going to be passing, they're going to be communicating via their representative to the top level council. And so at that stage, you're always ensuring that no group is going to be left out, because that's what the representatives on the highest level council are designed to do, is to bring any concerns or sort of cross-council issues to the fore when you get to that final vote at the top level. And so it's really, I would liken it to, in a governmental system, think of like a federal or a state government, you've got a committee that's specialized on some area of government, right? Transportation or the economy and business or healthcare. Those committees are going to be specialized. They're going to have more in-depth knowledge than you would expect a generalist, which is what the community and then the top level council are designed to be.
And on another topic that has once again come up under debate of how much should people be getting paid on the council, in this structure that is being proposed, Deraji, how much is being proposed that we pay each one of these council members, and how does that compare to the total being paid in V1 governance?
Yeah, something that was very important to us as we were putting this together is we didn't want this to be a financial burden on the DAO or really blow up the system. We wanted to blow up the number of spots and really make sure that we're getting that broad representation as well as the specialists, but it not be a significant change or burden to the DAO to afford this. And so to enable that, all of the elected community members at that mid-tier level in community are going to be at $2,000 USD per month paid in ILV. And then whoever has the added responsibility and frankly added meetings and requirements of them that gets chosen to the top level council, it will be an additional $2,000 per month in ILV. And so when you add that all up, it's just about the exact same amount at the $5,000 per month for the 5 members today.
It's a smidge more, I believe, but it's still less. Considering how many people are going to be employed, and the team admin, as well as any of the team members in any of these spots, they're not going to be paid anything additional for being on the council. It just is falling into their job description. When it comes to, how much time is this taking out of the team's hands, and is this going to slow down just development of the game or the project? I would have to say that these marketing, game, and ecosystem sub-councils, they're not going to be meeting more than once a week, and more likely once every 2 weeks. So the team member involved in that, they're really only doing a 1 or 2 hour meeting every week or two at the most. So it's a minimal time expense on the team's part, and the team admin pretty much like a similar time commitment as Kieran is currently doing on the council. So that isn't really a concern either.
And I think just jumping in for 2 points on that real quick, Vetemor, is one, that's also why it's critical that the team select who is the person to represent, because it is a time commitment. And we really need to make sure that we're enabling the team to deliver the product, because without that, nothing else matters. But we need to make sure that they're available and hearing the community sentiment to really push the DAO structure and decentralization, which speaks to what the role of the community, the elected community members on each of these subcouncils are, which is to really be that kind of filter and vetting system, so you don't have to have team members really spending hours and hours and hours monitoring Discord, responding to conversations. Like, it's great if they can, but we just don't want that to get in the way of them delivering the product and things that only they can do. And it's something that these elected community members really can take on that responsibility, make sure the community is heard, make sure we build good ideas, and use that as a vetting system to get that into the team members' hands and say, how do we bring this to life?
100%. And the 2 points on this diagram that we haven't touched on are Illuvium legal, which just basically means that the council overall will have communication with the legal team. That will probably be through the team admin. And also the Treasury subcouncil. Annie, could you explain the Treasury subcouncil in greater depth for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Treasury subcouncil is a really important point that's come up over this last epoch in particular, where within the community, we've seen there are times when you may have confidential decisions that need to be made. For instance, let's say, just for argument's sake, that Illuvium needs to perform some sort of merger or acquisition. And we have an opportunity, but we are going to need to move very quickly as a project to do so. The goal here is that you can confidentially and quickly send through any changes that you don't have time to go through the entire IIP process for. It's able to be written up very quickly, so you would still have an IIP that would be written for it and documented, but it's going to flow through this Treasury team. We have a defined level at which, above that total dollar expenditure, you need to send something through the Treasury, as opposed to it just being like daily operations. And if something hits that threshold, that Treasury Council, which is comprised of team members, will go through and do the first level vetting, and then can fast track it into the High Council. So at the end of the day, you still have that top tier of the governance structure that's voting on any change that's coming through, the same way that it is via an IIP, but you have this additional layer in which, if you need to act quickly, you can do so, because we do recognize that having more layers of councils is going to slow changes down. Some of that's okay, but there are times when we may need to act more swiftly, and this gives us a way to do so. My expectation is that it would be rare that we would want to use this process, but if it's necessary, then we have that avenue available to us as a project.
And to dial it back once again to the recent discussions of, you know, what do council members actually do in the time that they do, and are they really earning their money? There are some additional things that are being built into Governance V2. Deraji, could you speak more to that?
Yeah, I think I've been really following the channel closely as communities pushing on what does the council do. And that's something that's been really important to me as a council member, to give that value, to really contribute to the DAO. And so as we were building that, it's something we really wanted to clarify. And it goes into what qualifies somebody to be a council member, what are the expectations that the DAO has of them in accepting the nomination, potentially coming into the role. And as you can see here, we're really getting into what are the meeting expectations, the contributions that they're going to make, and the role that they play in distilling the community feedback into the council discussions. And so as you read through both the IIP and some of the supplemental information we've put together, you're going to see that role really built out a lot more, which I hope is a justification of the compensation, in addition to some of the other things that compensation brings of expectations, as well as just the commitment of the DAO to the representative model that we have. And so hopefully that's been something that's really been hotly debated. And I understand the frustration that there's a lot of things that have to happen in the background. Even if these discussions still happen in the background, hopefully folks will know this is what the expectations are and the time commitment, and resources and qualifications that it takes to be a successful council member.
Yeah, having it clarified beforehand so people are aware when they are running exactly what's going to be expected of them, so that the community is also aware exactly what is expected of a council member, so that it isn't this vague thing where I think this is expected of a council member and you think that. So that it's a lot more clarified. And I think you've also written in having more clarity around if somebody isn't actually meeting those expectations, how do we actually have a vote of no confidence, and how do we replace them so that there is a functional council in place, and that everybody is fulfilling their end.
Yeah, I would agree too that just by definition of having the targeted and specialized sub-councils, that also helps here, where today you might have someone that specializes in gameplay that's on the current Illuvinati council. In the future, we anticipate the people that are on the gameplay council specifically are going to be steering in that direction. So just by definition of the structure, it helps us with the expectations of each council member.
100%. And to close off this entire presentation that we've created for you guys, we'd also like to essentially make it very clear that regardless of if this gets voted in and made to go live exactly how it is, or if it's first edited a bit, once Gov V2 goes live, this isn't set in stone. So the entire purpose of this, and why we want to have this happening way before game launch, as soon as possible, is so that we can actually have this entire process of governance in Illuvium evolve over the course of that time. There will be some changes, I'm sure, once it's enacted, because to a great degree, this is an experiment, and we'd like to get it fine-tuned and in the best, most streamlined order as we can, so that once the game is live, governance is completely in place and ready to take the load. Thank you for watching, and definitely read the full IIP as well as the additional information that will be provided in the description. All of those links will be there. Thank you for watching, and take care.